Hey mates, it's me Riz doing reaction on sorry. Doing another reaction on the channel again. This time it's another play value reaction called The Fall of Atari. So pretty much the video game market crash, and with ET, which for the longest time I thought ET was like a giant mouth kind of thing, not a one-eyed guy with a long neck. Ugh. I said one-eye, but it's just like one pixel on it. Play that game. We'll get to that. They're probably going to talk about it. They're definitely going to talk about ET, about the Fall of Atari. I just know it. But you know, these videos, I haven't seen them in 10 years. So, well, got
You by Xbox Live Marketplace.
Oh, sorry. It just got really loud. Sorry. It just went through the mic. Ashes to ashes. Wait, I just realized something. I just realized that these were So who are these? Managing editor, collegehumor.com. Wow. It did not age well. Wait, actually, who am I kidding? It didn't. I broke up with my girlfriend because she let the dog out. Catch him, PR and marketing? I don't know. CNET and AOL games? I played some of their games? Yeah, it's a look. DJ and Guitar Hero Master. Ah. And game design.
So Atari was one of the fastest growing companies ever in America. No one had ever seen anything like it. And it was just this new exciting business, and people for the first time realized that video games were going to be a big thing. But the implosion was so massive and so quick that it almost brought down video games entirely.
Atari was sort of like the dark side of hippie culture. Bunch of dudes working out of a warehouse, a bunch of stoners.
Whoa, so what's... Wait, Steve Jobs was an Atari pro? Oh. Wow. Wow.
Some really talented programmers. Come 1976, they were ready in production on the VCS, which would later be the Atari 2600.
So Atari has this idea for a console with interchangeable cartridges, and they want to get it out on the market, but Fairchild Semiconductors, this other million-dollar company who's into semiconductors, obviously, put one out. And Atari sees it and they say, we got to get out there now before this hits it big. This is our idea.
So what they did was they went to Warner and they said, hey, come in with us, buy out our company and put some money in and we can put out this thing and we'll make a lot of money together. So Warner puts in like $30 million to buy the company. Then they put in like another $100 million to get this thing out on the market in time for the big holiday season.
So ultimately, Atari selling themselves to Warner worked because we've never heard of Channel F. But that sale and that success came at a price.
Realistically, the hippie culture that permeated Atari wasn't conducive to making profits. And they needed to go through some changes.
So Nolan Bushnell, he's the founder. He also started Chuck E. Cheese. He gets forced out. They beam in Ray Kassar from corporate headquarters, and he is a total button-down suit and tie guy, and he's going to turn everything around and make...
Why does this sound very familiar? Like, oh, this is the turning point of an independent company then becoming a corporate. So this is the stage of a company becoming corporate. Jeez.
This is a traditional by-the-numbers company. No more coming in at noon, no more smoking the reefer in the office.
It was a culture clash, and in a lot of ways, it destroyed what made Atari so great in the first place.
So from these starting irritations, like having to wear socks to the office, other problems grew out of that. The guys who were making the games, they were getting paid maybe 30 grand a year. And they would say, hey, I'm making this game. You just made $10 million off it. Can I get a little bonus? Can I get something extra? No, nothing.
Kassar wouldn't let the people who made the games take any credit for their work. Like, their names weren't mentioned on the game anywhere.
Cranes.
They were just basically programming monkeys, and, you know, the credit went to Atari.
Game design at this point is maybe not appreciated as the art it is today. Even today, I think...
Not appreciated today. Jeez. Looking back now, and today with all crunch and you have to be really out there to know that you made this game or was the head of this game. And heck, even voice actors, they kind of have some sort of shaft. They've been getting the shaft at points and points. Say points and points, like this example, and heck, also one of the biggest, the weirdest thing with the voice actors is that weird stupidity that they had to put in like a famous Hollywood actor, and they get the trophy, and instead of an actual professional voice actor. The good case of it was with Destiny, with the changing the voice from Peter Dinklage to Nolan North. Also, Hideo Kojima's just just changing the English dubs of Metal Gear from Metal Gear 5. They changed his they changed it from David Hayther? No, like Keen Hayther. Fuck. The guy who is the voice of Solid Snake, which, jeez, people who CEOs or just no appreciation with game development through its QA testers all the way to its head designers. Just as long as you make the deadlines. Fuck. It's honestly more of a bit. This is not just a video game issue. It's a business. It's a problem as a business issue with many companies. But anyway, let's continue.
I think people still kind of look at it as just programming, and it's not. There's a lot of choices to be made on a creative level. And they didn't really understand that at the time. So the designers weren't particularly well paid and they weren't respected.
Atari's top game makers, went to the brass and tried to get some more money, some royalties from the games they made, and, it never worked out. So a bunch of the top designers left Atari and went to make their own company.
And they actually do it. They leave and they start Activision. And Activision starts...
Oh yeah, I remembered that. Fuck, I remembered. It was a bunch of Atari... I forgot. Oh my goodness, this is just... It's just a bit sad. Now, Activision is now Atari at a much precedented worst off. Though, actually, I got a question. Anyone who's knowing. The people who left Activision, what are they doing now? Are they still around? I mean, did they leave Activision to form other companies? Because it's very oh my goodness, what Activision is now. Is it just now a brand name? It's the situation like with BioWare. Anything that was made with BioWare now, it's not the original people who founded BioWare. But anyway, I digress. It's
making and selling games for the Atari 2600.
Which nobody saw coming. Atari certainly didn't see it coming. And now this has never happened before. And mind you, this is
back up.
Atari and went to make their own company.
Games for the Atari 2600.
Which nobody saw coming.
Oh yeah, Activision made their own games, and then in their ads they always put their own name on who the guy who does he or she who made the program or the game. They put their name before the game, and when you played their games, there'd be a little text underneath. Also, I played some of their games. It's Atari. They're fine. They're okay, but actually, one of their best games on the Atari was I don't know if it was on the 2600, but it was I remember it was called Peter Ross's Baseball, and I don't know if that was I'm gonna say Peter Ross's Baseball, which was a really fun baseball game on the Atari system. But I say Atari, but I was playing it on a compilation game on the PS2, because Activision sold their they did compilations on PS2. They all do. They kind of have this kind of stuff as well. Yeah.
Atari certainly didn't see it coming. And now this has never happened before. And mind you, this is a big thing.
Atari never thought that could have happened. That their designers would leave. Like if they left, they'd be like, okay, well you just don't have a job. I don't think they thought they were smart enough to be like, well, I don't think it's illegal for us to create our own games.
Okay. Yeah, something like this. What would happen if this kind of happened? I mean, anyone got any good stories about how a bunch of top executives just left, just a very shit company, formed their own company, and made their own game that just was a big slap to the face on their predecessor company? As you think, with all these developers, they make enough money to say they can form their own company to make, maybe some small games and then try and make one big one. Because I don't think let's say if only wouldn't mind if if someone makes a good game and it just gives an excuse for them to, it gives people the excuse to get more money talks and all. But anyway, let's continue.
It's not just that some guys were leaving Atari, it's that the best guys were leaving Atari, and they were making great games like River Raid, like Pitfall. They were making better Atari games than Atari was making.
And they actually earned royalties
on
the sales of their game. So people were more invested.
I thought they put their names underneath.
It almost seems like a no-brainer.
David Crane, who created Pitfall,
Pitfall
David always says
Crane's
David
Pitfall.
Crane's Pitfall. Like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather, he put his name on it. It was his work.
The crazy thing is, within 2 years after Kassar showing up, Atari became the fastest growing company in the history of the United States.
And in 1982, Activision replaced Atari as the fastest growing company in the history of the United States.
Well, that just opened the floodgates. Then everybody and their cousin started a game company and started making cartridges for the Atari 2600.
Yeah, that was the thing. Anyone could have made an Atari 2600 cartridge and sell it. That's where you got there was no rating for the Atari 2600, and then you got a bunch of games that, oh my goodness, there was a lot of shit games. Like essentially, think of Steam's asset flips or Steam's the Steam Greenlight, but a lot worse. Or you know what? No matter where you see it, they're just as bad. But there was also just games that were just like really controversial games that, if we were to show today, definitely have an X rating on it. I think. Why would you put X rating for? Forget it. It's just.
Once Activision's out there and people realize, hey, I can get rich making games for the Atari, they still need to learn the same lesson Ray Kassar did. Video games are an art form. You can't just make one with no thought. You need the right people to do it. And there's just a flood of terrible games for the Atari, to the point where it becomes impossible to separate the wheat from the chaff. You don't know which are the good ones and which are the bad ones. People start to think that Atari is just garbage, because that's what most of the things were on it were garbage.
Now, with all these really bad games flooding the market, Atari says we need to do something to cut through the clutter. We're going to pull out the big guns and do some really big A-list titles. The first one is Pac-Man.
People were psyched. Retailers were clearing shelves for this game. They produced 12 million copies when only 10 million systems were in existence, thinking that Pac-Man was actually going to sell more systems. I mean, it was going to be that big.
Unfortunately, they thought it was just the name Pac-Man was enough. That was enough. The product itself was not that good.
It flickered, it had slowdown, it didn't even look like the arcade version. No, the sound effects were awful. Everything that they could have failed on this home Pac-Man,
don't worry, we can patch it. Oh wait,
so that was the first ace up the sleeve. That went boom, nowhere. The second ace turned out to be the second nail in their coffin. That was E.T. the video game.
When they decided to make the E.T. game, around June, July of '82, when they wanted the game to come out, Christmas of '82.
Now this is a classic example of the artist versus the corporate guys. The corporate guys say, hey, we just signed a deal with Spielberg. We got to get an E.T. game out there. And the artists say, okay, we'll make a game. It'll take us 6 months. And the suits go, 6 months? F that. You got 6 weeks. We got to get this thing on the trucks and on the shelves so we don't miss a day of the holiday shopping season.
Is it just me or anyone else just getting so many just flashbacks of that the video industry just never learns, or at least the corporate side? This is thinking Star Wars Battlefield 1 and 2, and even Destiny. 1 and 2. Jesus Christ. Jeez.
It'd be insane if a movie producer bought the movie rights to a book and was like, we have to make a movie about this. We have 8 hours. And that's basically what they did with E.T.
So 6 weeks go by, and they end up with something. I don't know if you'd really call it a game, but it was on.
Look at, when I played it, look, you got the 1 dot, but I thought this was like a mouth. I didn't know this was a neck. Call it bad game programming. I call it well, a rush job. Sorry, it was a rush job, to say the least. But I'm curious. Has anyone ever thought of making like a patched version of this, or like try to make an actual good ET game on the Atari 2600? People have made homebrew Atari games, so making a good one seems like
on a cartridge, and it had something that looked a little like ET, and he walked around and fell in some holes. But really, it was really one of the worst games of all time.
The root of all these problems is just a lack of respect for the design of the games. They look at them and they're like, moving blocks are moving blocks. What's the difference? They thought everyone has to have this game. But when the game's garbage, no one needs to have it. It's just, they're basically selling a box with ET on it.
Atari was left with more than 2 million unsold cartridges that were returned from retailers. They just dumped them in a landfill somewhere in New Mexico.
And then
just
they
like
found
that, the golden age of Atari was over. They had lost the hearts and minds of the people.
By the end of 1983, Atari had just completely tanked. Initially, they posted a $350 million loss. By the end of that year, grew to over $530 million.
So Warner says, we got to get out of this business. This is killing us. So they break up the company, they sell different divisions off, and the Atari name bounces around for years, being bought and sold. Eventually, it's bought by a French company. That's where it is today. And people don't realize that the Atari name they see today has nothing.
Oh yeah, the Atari. During this time, about let's say 5 years, 3 to 5 years ago, the Atari logo had been by a French company, but there were games that Atari published, I believe. I don't know if it was published or developed. I can't remember who it was published or developed. But the logo has been shown in some Dual Master games from the Game Boy Advance to PlayStation 2. There was a French. There was the they did It was in the logo was shown in the Atari. No, in the French CGI movie called Arthur and the Invisibles, which then came over to the West, and then they made. Sorry, did I say movie? I said game. So I'm supposed to say game. The logo was shown on the movie license of Arthur and the Invisible, which was a French it was a French CGI movie. Sorry, it was owned by a French company. You can put 2 and 2 together. And strangely enough, they were good games. Honestly, they're really good games for if not masterpieces, but good. You wouldn't mind buying them at that time. Also, the logo was around in a Dragon Ball Z game, Raging Blast 2, I believe it was. I don't know if they did the first one, but it was one of the let's say one of the best Dragon Ball Z games ever made, and one of the best third-party Nintendo DS games ever.
Nothing to do with the original Atari company. Somebody just bought the intellectual property rights to the name.
I guess the lesson of the whole story is just that it's just to look at video game design as an art form. It's not something you just put out in a factory. You need smart, creative people to do it. It's its own medium.
That's a main rule of thumb when you have a company. Do not crap on your employees, because you make them unhappy, they're gonna leave. And they're gonna, they're gonna come up with other ways to make money doing what they do.
The lesson to be learned here is treat your employees well, or you risk dying.
Oh my goodness, this hurts. Kind of a bit. Just maybe developers should do something like this. Maybe unite together and make sure that they get treated better, or just shitload them leave and make their own company, and just or a bunch of small companies to just say
play the games everyone wants
to take on the big.
For hundreds of great shows like this one, go
that's that. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. Please like and subscribe. It brings a smile to my face. And it seems like the video game industry just never learns until they get fucked. Well, not the top guys, at least. They don't get fucked. They fuck everyone at the bottom. Next video. We've got Tetris. This one's gonna be good. I could just know it.